I was 27 years old at the time, working a regular office job in a small town in Pennsylvania. Nothing about that day stood out. It was a normal Tuesday. I woke up early, drove to work, came back home around 6 p.m., and planned to spend the night alone. My wife was visiting her parents, so the house was quiet. The house itself was normal too. A single-story place in a calm neighborhood. Families lived on both sides. Kids played outside during the day. Nothing bad had ever happened there before. I had lived in that house for almost 3 years and never once felt unsafe. That evening, I made dinner, watched some TV, and checked my phone. Around 9 p.m., I locked the front door, turned off the living room lights, and went to my bedroom. Everything felt routine, comfortable,
Familiar.
I remember lying on my bed, scrolling through messages, listening to the low hum of the air conditioner. The kind of silence you don't even notice because you're used to it. I wasn't scared. I wasn't nervous. I didn't feel watched. Then I heard a sound. It was faint, almost easy to ignore. It sounded like something brushing against the floor. At first, I thought it was the air vent kicking on. Or maybe the house settling. Old houses make noises. I told myself that, and kept looking at my phone. A few seconds later, I heard it again. This time, it was clearer.
Slower.
Like a foot dragging slightly across the hallway floor. I sat up in bed and listened. Nothing. I waited for a few moments, expecting another sound, but the house went quiet again. I remember feeling a small wave of annoyance more than fear. I assumed it was nothing. Maybe a neighbor closing a door. Maybe my imagination filling in gaps. I laid back down. That's when I noticed something else. The hallway light was on. I was sure I had turned it off before going to bed. I always did. I hated wasting electricity, and the light switch was right next to my bedroom door. I would have noticed. I stared at the thin line of light coming from under my door. It didn't move. It didn't flicker. I told myself I probably forgot. That happens sometimes. Long day. Tired mind. Still, I didn't get up to turn it off. I don't know why, but a strange feeling settled in my chest. Not panic. Not fear. Just a quiet sense that something was slightly off. Then I heard breathing. It wasn't loud. It wasn't aggressive. It sounded calm.
Slow.
Steady. And it wasn't coming from outside. It was coming from somewhere inside my house. The house was a small, single-story home built sometime in the late 1980s. It sat on a quiet street lined with similar houses, all with short driveways and trimmed lawns. Nothing about it looked unusual. White siding, a gray roof, and a narrow front porch with 2 wooden steps. It was the kind of place you'd drive past without ever remembering. Inside, the layout was simple. A living room connected to a short hallway. 2 bedrooms on the left. Bathroom on the right.
Kitchen at the end.
From the bedroom, I could see straight down the hall if the door was open. That night, my door was half closed. It was late fall, and the air outside had started to turn cold. The windows were shut, and the house felt sealed in. The only sound was the steady buzz of the air conditioner and the occasional car passing somewhere far down the road. No wind.
No rain.
Just stillness. It was around 9:30 p.m. when all of this happened. The neighborhood was usually asleep by then. Most of the lights outside were off. The street lamp across from my house cast a dull orange glow through the front window, barely lighting the living room. I was there alone because my wife was out of town for a few days. She was visiting her parents in another state. We talked earlier that evening, and she went to bed early. After the call ended, I locked the front door and double-checked the back door, like I always did when I knew I'd be sleeping alone. I wasn't doing anything unusual that night.
No drinking.
No loud music. Just lying in bed, scrolling on my phone, letting time pass until I felt tired enough to sleep. The TV in the living room was off. All the lights were off, except the hallway light, which I still hadn't convinced myself was a problem. The house had never given me a reason to feel uneasy before. I knew the neighbors by name. A retired couple lived on one side. A family with 2 kids lived on the other. The area was considered safe. Low crime. Quiet police reports. I didn't own any pets.
No dogs. No cats.
Nothing that could explain sounds or movement on its own. Every noise in that house usually had a clear reason behind it. That night, nothing felt dramatic or dangerous yet. I wasn't scared. I wasn't alert. I was just a tired man in a quiet house, alone for a few days, waiting for sleep to come. After lying there for a few minutes, I locked my phone and set it face down on the nightstand. The light from the screen faded, and the room went dark again. The hallway light was still on, casting that thin line under my door. I watched it without really meaning to. That's when I heard another sound. It came from a kitchen this time. A soft, dull noise, like something being lightly bumped. Not enough to sound like a crash, just enough to be noticed. I held my breath and listened. The house stayed quiet for several seconds. Then there was a faint creak, slow and drawn out, like someone putting weight on the floor. I told myself it was the wood shifting. Older houses do that when the temperature changes. I had heard similar sounds before. Still, this one felt different. It had rhythm to it. One creak, a pause, then another. I sat up again and looked toward the bedroom door. The handle didn't move. The door stayed closed. Nothing appeared in the hallway. The light remained steady. Then I heard something else. A low sound, barely louder than a whisper. It sounded like someone exhaling through their nose. I felt my stomach tighten. I stayed completely still, listening hard. My ears started picking up every small noise in the room. The hum of the air conditioner, the faint ringing in my head, my own breathing, suddenly louder than it should have been. The sound came again, closer this time. I slid my feet off the bed and stood up slowly, careful not to make a sound. The floor beneath me was cold. I stepped lightly toward the door and rested my hand on the wall to keep my balance. That's when the hallway light went off. The line of light under my door disappeared all at once. The house felt darker than before, like something had closed in around me. I froze. A few seconds passed. Then I heard a soft shuffle right outside my bedroom door.
Not fast.
Not rushed. Slow, like whoever it was didn't care if they were heard. My heart started beating harder. Not panic.
Not yet.
Just a steady, uncomfortable pressure in my chest. I leaned closer to the door and listened. There was a faint scraping sound, like fabric brushing against the wall. Then a shadow moved across the bottom of the door. I stepped back without thinking. At that moment, I knew something was wrong. Not imagined. Not a mistake. Someone was inside my house. I stood there in the dark, staring at my bedroom door, trying to decide what to do. My mind ran through simple explanations, but none of them made sense anymore. The house was locked. I had checked the doors myself. There was no reason for anyone to be inside. Another slow sound came from the hallway. Footsteps. They were quiet, but deliberate. Each one landed with care, like whoever was out there didn't want to trip or rush. The steps moved past my door, then stopped. I waited, counting my breaths, hoping they would continue toward the living room. They didn't. Instead, I heard the faint click of a light switch. The hallway light came back on. The glow returned under my door, brighter this time. I could see a shadow standing directly in front of it. I backed away until my legs touched the bed. There was nowhere else to go. The window was on the far side of the room, but the blinds were closed, and I knew the screen was locked. Even if I opened it, the drop to the ground outside would slow me down. The shadow shifted. I could see the outline of a head, shoulders. Then the doorknob turned. Not fast. Not forced. Just a slow, careful twist, like the person was testing it. When it didn't open, the hand stayed there. I imagined fingers wrapped around the knob, waiting. I wanted to yell. I wanted to move. I couldn't do either. The knob turned again, harder this time. The door shook slightly in its frame. I took a step back and nearly tripped over the edge of the bed. That's when I heard breathing again.
It was right on the other side of the door now. Deep. Steady.
Patient. Whoever it was knew I was in there. I looked around the room, searching for something I could use. My phone was still on the nightstand. I reached for it slowly, afraid the sound would give me away. The screen lit up my hand and part of the wall. I turned the brightness down immediately. The breathing stopped. For a moment, there was complete silence. Then something scraped lightly against the door. Fingernails. They dragged slowly from the top down, leaving faint lines in the wood. The sound made my skin crawl. I pressed myself against the wall, holding my phone tight, realizing I was trapped in my own bedroom, with someone standing just inches away, taking their time. The fingernails stopped dragging across the door. For a second, I thought the person had stepped away. Then the door handle dropped. The door opened just a few inches before the chain lock caught. The gap was small, but enough for me to see part of his face through it. One eye, wide and focused, watching me. He didn't rush in. He didn't force the door. He leaned closer and spoke quietly, like we were having a normal conversation. "I know you're awake." My body went cold. I stepped back until my shoulders hit the wall. My phone slipped in my sweaty hand, but I caught it before it hit the floor. I tried to call 911, but my fingers were shaking so badly, I missed the numbers twice. The man pushed the door again. Harder this time. The chain stretched and rattled. The screws in the frame groaned. I shouted without thinking. I yelled for him to leave. My voice cracked halfway through. He didn't respond. He just smiled slightly and pulled back. That's when he kicked the door. The chain snapped clean out of the frame. The door flew open and slammed into the wall. I stumbled sideways as he stepped into the room. He was taller than I expected.
Thin.
Wearing a dark jacket and gloves. His eyes never left me. I ran. I squeezed past him, feeling his arm brush my shoulder as I bolted into the hallway. I heard him turn and follow immediately. His footsteps were faster now.
Heavy.
I sprinted toward the front door, nearly slipping on the hardwood floor. I could hear him breathing behind me, louder, closer. I reached the living room and grabbed a chair, knocking it over as I ran. I didn't stop to pick it up. I slammed into the front door and fumbled with the lock, my hands barely working. The door flew open just as he reached for me. I stumbled out onto the porch and fell down the steps, hitting my knee hard. Pain shot at my leg, but I forced myself back up and ran barefoot across the yard. I screamed for help, over and over. The porch light behind me turned on. I glanced back and saw him standing in the doorway, watching me run. He didn't chase me any further. He just stood there, calm, like he had all the time in the world. I ran to my neighbor's house and banged on the door until they opened it. I collapsed inside, shaking, barely able to speak. The police arrived minutes later. By the time they searched my house, he was gone. The police searched the house room by room while I sat on my neighbor's couch, wrapped in a blanket. My knee was bleeding, and my hands wouldn't stop shaking. I tried to answer questions, but everything felt delayed, like my mind was a few seconds behind my body. They didn't find him. No broken windows. No forced doors. The officers checked the locks and looked confused. Both the front and back doors were still locked from the inside. The chain on my bedroom door was the only thing damaged. That didn't make sense. One of the officers walked me back inside and asked me to show him exactly what happened. As I stood in the hallway, I noticed something I hadn't seen before. The attic hatch. It was slightly open. I stared at it for a long moment before pointing it out. The officer pulled it down and climbed up to check. When he came back down, his expression had changed. Someone had been living up there. There were flattened cardboard boxes, empty water bottles, and food wrappers pushed into the corner. A small flashlight. A blanket folded tight, like it had been used recently. The officer told me it looked like someone had been up there for a while.
Days.
Maybe longer. Then came the part that made my stomach drop. The man didn't break in that night. He had been inside the house before my wife left town. The officer explained that the attic could be accessed through a panel in the garage. I remembered leaving the garage door open earlier that week while unloading groceries. Long enough for someone to slip inside unnoticed. They found shoe prints in the dust up there. Fresh ones. Leading to a small opening above the hallway. Right above my bedroom door. That's when I understood the breathing. He wasn't just outside my room. He had been above it. Listening. Watching through the cracks in the ceiling while I moved around the house, completely unaware. He knew my routine. He knew when the lights went off. He knew I was alone. The police told me something else before they left. They checked nearby reports and found similar incidents in the area. Homes where nothing was stolen. No damage. Just signs that someone had been inside for days without being noticed. They never found him. And the worst part wasn't that he escaped. It was knowing that the night I heard him, he wasn't breaking in. He was finally stepping out.
I didn't stay in that house after that night.
I packed a bag the next morning and went to stay with my wife's parents until we could figure out what to do.
The house felt wrong now.
Not broken. Not damaged. Just watched. Before leaving for the last time, I walked through each room with one of the officers. Everything looked the same as it always had. The couch was where I left it. The dishes were still in the sink. My bed was still unmade. That was what bothered me the most. There was no sign that someone had been there.
No obvious miss.
No clear proof of how long he had been watching us live our normal lives inside that house. The attic hatch had been closed again, but I couldn't stop staring at it. The police said they would keep an eye on the area. They told me the man might have moved on. They used words like likely and probably. None of it sounded certain. A few days later, I went back with my wife to collect the rest of our things.
It was daytime.
The sun was out. The house felt smaller in the light, less threatening. But when I stood in the hallway, I noticed something. The ceiling above the bedroom door had faint scratches. Long, thin lines in the paint. They hadn't been there before. The officer with us said it was probably from animals or old damage. I nodded, but I knew better. The lines were too straight. Too close together. That night, after we moved into a new place, I woke up suddenly in the dark. The room was quiet. My wife was asleep beside me. I could hear breathing.
Slow. Calm. Familiar.
I held my breath and listened, my heart pounding, waiting to realize it was just my own. After a few seconds, the sound. I never heard anything else after that. But even now, months later, I still catch myself listening at night. Still checking the ceiling. Still making sure every door is locked. Because the police never found him. And I don't know if he left that house. Or if he just learned to stay hidden better. We never went back to that house after we finished moving our things out. We sold it a few months later, fully disclosed, at a loss. Someone still bought it. A young couple. No kids. I didn't tell them everything.
I don't know why.
Maybe part of me wanted to believe it was over. Life slowly returned to normal. New routines. New walls. New sounds. I went back to work. My wife stopped asking if I was okay every 5 minutes. From the outside, everything looked fine. But something inside me never settled. At night, I started waking up at the same time. Always between 2 o'clock and 2:30 a.m.
No alarm.
No noise that I could explain. I would just open my eyes, already alert, already listening. Our new apartment was on the 2nd floor.
No attic. No crawl spaces.
I checked when we moved in. Still, I kept my eyes on the ceiling longer than I should have. Sometimes, I thought I heard movement. Not footsteps. Not creaks. Just a soft shift. Like weight adjusting. I told myself it was pipes. The building settling. Neighbors above us. Normal things. That's what I always told myself. A few weeks after we moved, I noticed something strange on my phone. A missed call with no number listed.
No voicemail.
The timestamp was from the middle of the night. I ignored it. Then, it happened again. And again. Always after 2 a.m. One night, I checked the voicemail anyway. It was empty. But the call length showed almost 2 minutes. Like someone had stayed on the line listening. I asked the phone company about it. They couldn't trace the number. A month later, I ran into one of my old neighbors from the house. The retired man from next door. He recognized me immediately and asked why we moved so. I told him we needed a change. He hesitated, then said something that made my chest tighten. He said he still saw lights turn on in our old house late at night, even before the new owners moved in. I laughed it off, said it was probably contractors or showings. He didn't laugh back. He said the lights were always in the hallway, always late, always off again by morning. That night, I checked every lock in our apartment twice. I stood on a chair and checked the smoke detector, the vents, anything that could be opened. Everything was sealed. Still, I barely slept. A few days later, my wife showed me something on her phone. A photo she didn't remember taking. It was dark and blurry, like the camera had turned on by accident. The angle was wrong. Too high. Pointed down. It was our bedroom. You could see the bed. You could see us sleeping. The timestamp said 2:17 a.m. We deleted it. We didn't talk about it after that. Nothing else ever happened. No break-ins.
No sightings. No proof.
Just small things that never added up. Sounds that stopped when I listened too closely. Calls that left no trace. The feeling of being observed when everything was quiet. The police never followed up. No arrests were made. No suspect was identified. The incidents in the area stopped appearing in reports. Sometimes I wonder if that's the worst part. Not knowing if he moved on. Not knowing if he was caught. Not knowing if he ever really left. Even now, when the house is silent and the lights are off, I still lie awake some nights, staring into the dark. Listening. Because I learned something that night. If you don't hear anything at all, that doesn't always mean you're alone. Even now, I still think about the timing of everything. How precise it all felt. How quiet he was. How patient. Whoever he was, he understood routines. He knew when people slept. When they stopped listening. Months passed, then a year. Nothing concrete ever happened again.
No proof. No confirmation.
Just silence. On the surface, that should have been comforting. It wasn't. Every place I live now, the first thing I check is above me. I ask about attics. Crawl spaces. Access panels. I look for fresh paint that doesn't match. Screws that look too new. Vents that sit slightly crooked. Sometimes I catch myself standing still in a room, holding my breath, just to see if I can hear someone else breathing. I never tell guests why I keep hallway lights on at night, or why I lock bedroom doors even when I'm home, or why I flinch when I hear slow footsteps overhead, even in buildings where no one lives above us. The police told me it was unlikely he followed us. That cases like this usually end with the person disappearing for good. But they also said something else. People like that don't break in to steal. They break in to stay close. That's the thought I can't escape. Because I don't know if he chose that house.
Or if he chose me.
And every night, when the world goes quiet and the ceiling doesn't make a sound at all, I wonder if that's because no one is there, or because whoever it is has learned not to move anymore. The last thing I do before sleeping is listen. Not casually. Not briefly. I stay still and let the silence settle, waiting to see if it stays empty. Most nights, it does. But every once in a while, there's a moment, just a second, when the quiet feels wrong. Too controlled. Like something is holding its breath along with me. When that happens, I don't move. I don't check. I don't turn on the light. Because I learned something I never forgot. The most dangerous part isn't hearing someone in your house. It's realizing they already know you're awake, and they're waiting for you to fall asleep first.